A simple act of kindness. Lily was only 8 years old, but she had a heart bigger than most people. She didn't understand the world like adults did, but she knew right from wrong. Her family was enjoying a cozy dinner at a small diner in their town. It was a simple night. Lily's parents were talking to each other. Her little brother was busy with his tablet, and Lily was looking out the window, watching the rain fall softly outside. The diner was warm, the smell of freshly baked bread and sizzling food filling the air. But as Lily gazed around, something caught her attention. At a small table in the corner of the room, an elderly man sat all alone. His back was hunched, his hands shaking slightly as he fiddled with the edges of his napkin. He looked sad, as if the world had forgotten about him. His eyes seemed lost in thought, far away, not noticing the world around him. It wasn't the kind of loneliness that came from being alone for a few minutes. It was the kind that came from a long, deep sorrow. Lily's heart sank as she watched him. She couldn't imagine being so alone. She looked over at her parents, then at her little brother, who was laughing at something on his tablet. She was thankful that she had a family who loved her, but this man, he had no one. Without saying a word, Lily stood up and walked over to the man's table. Her small footsteps were quiet, but her heart was pounding. She had never done anything like this before. She wasn't sure how he would respond, but she knew she couldn't just sit there. She had to do something. "Excuse me, sir," she said softly, standing next to his chair. The man looked up in surprise, his wrinkled face softening as he saw the young girl standing there. His eyes were filled with curiosity, but he didn't say anything right away. Lily smiled shyly. "Would you like to sit with us?" she asked. "It looks like you're eating alone." For a moment, the man didn't speak. He just stared at her, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. He seemed to hesitate, his eyes darting toward the other empty seats around him. Lily waited patiently, her small hands clasped together in front of her. "Are you sure?" he asked quietly, his voice full of doubt. "I don't want to bother you." Lily nodded quickly. "No, you're not bothering me. My family won't mind. My mom and dad will be happy to have you join us." The man's eyes twinkled for a second, and he seemed to soften. He slowly stood up, his old knees creaking with the effort, and took a seat at Lily's table. She returned to her seat, feeling proud of herself for taking that first step. She didn't understand why, but she knew this was the right thing to do. Her parents were surprised at first when Lily invited the man to sit with them, but they didn't say anything. They just smiled at him, welcoming him to their table. Lily's little brother, Sam, looked up from his tablet and blinked in surprise. But then he smiled too. The man introduced himself as Mr. Harris. He was in his 70s, and he had been coming to the diner for years, but he had never eaten with anyone before. He always sat alone, quietly eating his meals and leaving. That night, something was different. Mr. Harris didn't have much to say at first, but Lily asked him questions about his life. She was always curious about the older people in town. She loved hearing their stories, the way they described how things used to be. As Mr. Harris began to talk, his voice became a little stronger. He told them about his younger years, when he had worked as a teacher and traveled to many places. He shared funny stories about his adventures, and slowly, the sadness in his eyes began to fade. Lily listened closely, her eyes wide with wonder as Mr. Harris spoke. He told stories of how he had once lived in a small house by the beach, how he used to dance to music at local parties, and how he loved to read books about faraway lands. He even told them about his favorite meal, a homemade apple pie his mother used to bake every autumn. Everyone at the table listened, smiling and laughing at Mr. Harris's stories. Lily's parents were amazed at how animated he became as he spoke. They hadn't expected such a change from the quiet, lonely man they had seen sitting in the corner earlier. By the time dessert came, everyone felt as if they had known Mr. Harris for years. As they finished their meal, Lily felt a warm sense of happiness. She looked at Mr. Harris, who was smiling now, his face not so sad anymore. "Thank you, Lily," he said with a kind smile. "You've made my birthday very special. I haven't had a dinner like this in many years." Lily smiled back, feeling proud of herself for making a difference. "You're welcome, Mr. Harris," she said. "I'm happy you could join us." But as the evening came to a close, something unusual happened. As Mr. Harris stood up to leave, he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small folded card. He handed it to Lily, his eyes filled with gratitude. "This is for you," he said softly. "I don't have much, but I want you to have this. You've made my heart feel full again." Lily took the card, her heart fluttering in her chest. She didn't know what it meant, but she knew it was important. Mr. Harris smiled one last time, gave a small wave, and walked out of the diner. As he disappeared into the night, Lily looked down at the card, wondering what was inside. Little did she know, this simple act of kindness would lead her to a mystery she never could have imagined. The mysterious card. The next morning, Lily woke up feeling good about the night before. She had a small smile on her face as she got out of bed, remembering how she had invited Mr. Harris to sit with her family at the diner. It had been a simple gesture, but it had made him so happy. Lily had never thought that one small act of kindness could make such a difference. As she moved around her room getting ready for school, she noticed the small card Mr. Harris had given her sitting on her nightstand. It had been left there when she had gone to bed last night. Her curiosity had gotten the best of her, but she hadn't opened it yet. What could be inside? What could be so important that Mr. Harris would give it to her? The card had no name, no markings, only a simple design of a flower on the front. Lily sat down on the edge of her bed and gently opened the card. Inside, written in elegant handwriting, were the words, "For you, Lily. There is more to me than meets the eye. You've opened a door I didn't think would be opened. Thank you for your kindness. It will not be forgotten." Lily frowned as she read the message. It sounded like a thank you note, but there was something about the words that felt strange. There is more to me than meets the eye. What did that mean? And what door had she opened? Lily had done nothing more than share her dinner with him. She didn't think that would lead to anything mysterious. But then her attention was drawn to a small folded piece of paper inside the card. She carefully unfolded it, revealing a phone number written on it. There was no name, no explanation, just a number. Lily stared at the number for a moment. Why would Mr. Harris leave this for her? Should she call it? What if it was a mistake? Or was it a secret message meant for someone else? Her mind raced with questions. She didn't want to be rude, but she wasn't sure if it was the right thing to do. Maybe she should tell their parents, but then again, she didn't want them to think she was being too curious about something that didn't matter. She decided to keep the card to herself for now, but the mystery didn't leave her mind. All day during school, she found herself distracted, thinking about the phone number and the strange message. Why would Mr. Harris leave it for her? Was there something more to him than just the lonely old man she met the night before? After school, Lily hurried home. She couldn't wait to tell their parents about her new experience at the diner, but she also couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. When she walked through the front door, she was met with the smell of fresh cookies, a comfort after a long day. Her mom was sitting at the kitchen table, flipping through a magazine, while her little brother, Sam, was in the living room playing with his toys. "Hey, sweetie," her mom greeted her with a smile. "How was school?" "It was fine," Lily replied, trying to keep her voice steady. She didn't want her mom to think something was wrong, but she couldn't help it. I wanted to tell you about something that happened last night." Her mom put down the magazine and looked at her with curiosity. "Oh, what happened?" Lily hesitated, but then decided to tell her mom about Mr. Harris and the dinner. She explained how she had invited him to join her family and how happy he seemed afterward. She even told her mom about the card and the phone number. Her mom's face grew serious as she listened. "That's very nice of you, Lily," she said slowly, "but I don't know if it's a good idea to keep a stranger's phone number. We don't know anything about him." I know, Mom, Lily said, fidgeting with the card in her hands. But he seemed really nice, and he gave it to me. I don't think it's a prank or anything. Her mom nodded, but there was a hint of concern in her eyes. I understand, but just be careful, okay? You never know when someone might not be who they say they are. Lily didn't say anything, but the words stuck with her. Her mom was right. She didn't know anything about Mr. Harris other than his sad story and the kindness he had shown her. But this was different. There was something mysterious about the card, and the phone number made it all the more puzzling. That night, after dinner, Lily lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. The mystery of the card filled her thoughts. She couldn't let it go. She had to know who Mr. Harris really was and why he had given her the phone number. As she reached for the card on her nightstand, she noticed something strange. The card wasn't exactly the same as it had been earlier. The flower design on the front had changed slightly, as if the ink had shifted. The words inside, though, were still the same. But now, Lily was more confused than ever. What was going on? Why did the card change? She couldn't ignore it anymore. It was like the card was calling her to figure out the mystery. Maybe the phone number wasn't just a random number. Maybe it was the key to something bigger, something she didn't understand yet. Lily stared at the number once more. Her heart raced as she wondered if this was the right moment. Was she ready to find out what was really going on? The mystery was unfolding, and there was no going back now. The knock at the door. The next morning, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't quite right. She had spent the entire night thinking about the mysterious card and phone number that Mr. Harris had given her. The words, "There is more to me than meets the eye," kept echoing in her head, like a puzzle she couldn't solve. Why would an elderly man she barely knew, someone who had seemed so kind the night before, give her a cryptic note with a strange phone number? Her mom had warned her about being careful, but Lily couldn't stop wondering. She wasn't used to feeling this uncertain. Everything in her gut told her that the situation was more complicated than she first thought. She tried to focus on school, but her mind wandered during every class. Her thoughts kept drifting to Mr. Harris and the card. Why hadn't he explained what the phone number was for? Why leave such an odd message instead of a simple thank you? By the time Lily got home, her stomach was in knots. She had spent the whole day trying to distract herself, but she hadn't been able to. It felt like the mystery was pulling her in, and she wasn't sure if she was ready to dive deeper. When she walked through the door, she was greeted by the usual sounds of her family. Her mom was in the kitchen, preparing dinner, while her brother Sam was playing with his toy cars in the living room. Everything seemed normal, but Lily couldn't shake the unease she felt. It was as if something was lurking just around the corner, waiting to unfold. Just as she was about to head upstairs to do her homework, there was a sharp knock at the front door. It wasn't the usual soft tap she was used to. This knock was forceful, demanding attention. Lily's heart skipped a beat. Who could it be? Her parents weren't expecting anyone, and she wasn't expecting any visitors. She glanced at her mom, who was busy in the kitchen, so Lily hesitated. She knew she should go answer the door, but something inside her hesitated. After a moment of hesitation, Lily walked cautiously to the front door and peered through the peephole. To her surprise, standing on the other side was a police officer, his uniform crisp and sharp. He looked serious, his face unreadable. Lily's pulse quickened as she opened the door slowly, trying to remain calm. "Can I help you, officer?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. The officer gave her a polite nod, but didn't smile. "Good afternoon, miss. Is this the residence of Lily Parker?" he asked. Lily nodded, her heart racing. "Yes, that's me. We've received a report, and I need to ask you a few questions," the officer said. His voice was steady, but there was a sharp edge to it that made Lily's stomach drop. "May I come inside?" Lily's mind raced. What could this be about? She hadn't done anything wrong, had she? Her thoughts immediately went to the card and the phone number Mr. Harris had given her. Could this be connected? But how? Trying to stay composed, she stepped back to let the officer in. "Of course, officer. What is this about?" The officer stepped inside, his eyes scanning the room quickly. "Do you know a man named Mr. Harris?" he asked, his voice flat. Lily felt a chill run down her spine. "Yes," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I met him last night at the diner. I invited him to join us for dinner." The officer nodded. "Did he give you anything? Any personal items, cards or notes?" Lily swallowed hard. "Yes," she said, feeling a lump form in her throat. "He gave me a card with a phone number on it." The officer's expression didn't change, but there was a slight tightening in his jaw. "Do you have that card?" Lily hesitated. She wasn't sure if she should show him the card. But the officer didn't seem like he was there to cause trouble. He looked serious, but not threatening. She quickly ran up to her room and returned with the card in hand, holding it out for the officer to take. He took the card, examining it closely. Lily could feel her heart thumping in her chest as he studied it. After a moment, he looked up at her. "Lily, I need you to listen carefully. Mr. Harris isn't who you think he is." Lily's breath caught in her throat. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice shaking. "He was just a lonely man. He seemed nice." The officer's face softened just a little, but his tone remained serious. "I understand that, but Mr. Harris is a person of interest in an ongoing investigation. We've been trying to locate him for a while now, and he may be involved in something much larger than you realize. I'm afraid you're not the only person he's reached out to." Lily's mind was spinning. She could barely process what the officer was saying. "You're saying Mr. Harris is in trouble?" The officer nodded gravely. "I'm afraid so. And a card he gave you. It may be part of a larger plan. We believe he's been using it to contact people he trusts, but we're still trying to piece everything together." Lily felt the world spin around her. She had only wanted to do something kind, to share a moment with someone who seemed lonely. Now she was caught in the middle of a mystery that felt far bigger than anything she could have imagined. "I don't know what to do," Lily whispered, feeling lost and confused. The officer placed a hand on her shoulder, trying to offer some comfort. "Just be careful, Lily. If Mr. Harris reaches out to you again, don't respond. We're handling the situation, but we need you to stay safe." As the officer left, Lily stood frozen by the door, her mind racing. She had never imagined that a simple act of kindness could lead to something so dangerous, unraveling the mystery. Lily sat in her room, her hands trembling as she replayed the officer's words in her mind. Everything had changed. What started as a simple, kind gesture had now turned into something far more serious. Mr. Harris wasn't who he seemed to be. The police were looking for him, and she had unwittingly become involved in an investigation. Her thoughts kept returning to the card. The officer had been insistent that she not contact Mr. Harris again, but the phone number still burned in her mind. What if it was all a misunderstanding? What if Mr. Harris really was just a lonely old man, and the police were overreacting? But another part of her, the part that now felt a deep unease in her gut, told her there was more to the story. She couldn't ignore it. She had to find out what was going on. That evening, as the sun set and the house quieted, Lily made a decision. She would call the number. She had to know more. Maybe it was the wrong thing to do, but her curiosity and concern for Mr. Harris outweighed her fear. Taking a deep breath, Lily grabbed her phone and dialed the number from the card. Her hand shook as she pressed the phone to her ear. The line rang for several seconds before it was answered with a soft click. "Hello," a smooth, calm voice answered on the other end. Lily hesitated. Was this really the person she wanted to talk to? Should she even be calling? But her instincts told her this could be the answer she was looking for. "Hello," the voice repeated. Lily finally found her voice. Hi. Is this Mr. Harris? The man who gave me a card last night." There was a long pause before the voice on the other end responded. "Who is this?" Lily's heart raced. It's Lily Parker. I met you last night at the diner. You gave me a card with your number on it. Another long pause, and then the voice came through again, this time sounding more cautious. Lily Parker, huh? I see. I didn't think you'd actually call. Lily felt a chill run down her spine. Why did you give me the card? What's going on? The police came to my house today. They said you were involved in something. Is that true? The voice on the other end of the line seemed to hesitate before it responded. Listen, Lily, I didn't mean for you to get caught up in this, but you need to understand something. I'm not a criminal, but I've been caught up in some dangerous things I wish I could get out of. If the police are after me, it's because of the things I've been forced to do. Lily felt a wave of confusion wash over her. What do you mean, forced to do? I can't go into details right now, the voice said, a sense of urgency creeping into its tone. But I'll tell you this. You were a part of something last night, something bigger than you realize, and now the people I've been running from are watching you too. Lily's heart pounded in her chest. Watching me? What do you mean? What's going on? I don't understand. I'm sorry, but there's no time to explain everything. Just stay away from me, and stay away from anyone who might be looking for you, the voice urged. Before Lily could say another word, the call suddenly ended. She stared at the phone in shock, the weight of what she had just heard sinking in. Who were these people? What had Mr. Harris been involved in? And why had he called her a part of it? Lily felt her head spin. She had only wanted to do something kind, to make a lonely man feel less invisible. Now she was tangled up in something she couldn't understand. As she sat there, trying to process everything, she heard a knock at the door. Her heart skipped a beat. Could it be the police again? Or was it someone else? Lily stood up slowly, her mind racing. She cautiously walked to the door and peeked through the peephole. To her surprise, it wasn't an officer or anyone she recognized. It was a man standing on the doorstep, his face partially hidden by the shadows. Lily's pulse quickened. Who was he? Was this person connected to the mystery that was quickly consuming her life? She took a deep breath and opened the door. The man on the other side of the door looked up at her, his expression serious. Are you Lily Parker? He asked, his voice low and calm. Lily nodded, feeling uneasy. Yes. Who are you? The man didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced around quickly, checking the street before his gaze returned to her. I'm here to help you, but you need to trust me. Lily's mind raced. Help me with what? Who are you? I can't explain everything right now, the man said. But I know about Mr. Harris. I know he's been in trouble, and I know he's put you in danger. You're not the only one he's reached out to. There are people looking for him, and now they're looking for you too. Lily's stomach dropped. What do you want me to do? Come with me, the man said, his eyes locking onto hers. You're in this now, whether you want to be or not, but I can help you get out of it. Lily was faced with a decision. What did she do now? Was this man really trying to help her, or was he part of the same dangerous group that Mr. Harris had warned her about? She had no idea who to trust. The air around her seemed to grow heavier with tension as she took a step back, unsure of what to do next. A dangerous choice. Lily stood frozen in the doorway, staring at the man. His words echoed in her mind. I can help you get out of it. But was he telling the truth? How did she know she could trust him? The man looked sincere, but sincerity didn't always mean safety. She had already learned it the hard way. She glanced over her shoulder, as if the answers to her questions might be hidden somewhere inside her house. Her mother was still at work, unaware of everything that had happened. If she went with this man, what would she say to her mother? But then again, if she didn't go, what could happen? The man claimed there were people looking for her, people connected to Mr. Harris, people she didn't understand, and who didn't seem to have any good intentions. Lily's heart raced. She felt cornered, as though there was no way out. She had to make a choice, and fast. But which one? Why should I trust you? She finally asked, her voice shaky but firm. How do I know you're not involved in whatever Mr. Harris is in? The man's expression softened, but there was a sharpness in his eyes that made Lily uneasy. I understand why you're scared, he said, but I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to help you avoid a much bigger danger. He paused. You don't know it yet, but your life just changed last night. And right now, you're standing in the middle of something much bigger than you. Lily swallowed hard, her throat dry. What could he mean? What do you mean? What's going on? I can't explain everything just yet, the man replied. But I promise it's not safe here for you. The people looking for Mr. Harris are dangerous, and they'll stop at nothing to find him. They've already seen you. They know who you are, and now they'll be watching your every move. A chill ran down Lily's spine. She glanced nervously down the street, as if expecting someone to appear at any moment. What do I do? She whispered. Come with me, the man said, holding out his hand. We need to get you out of here. I can keep you safe. Lily hesitated, staring at the man's outstretched hand. Her instincts screamed at her to say no, to stay in the safety of her home where it felt familiar. But something else, something deeper, told her that she couldn't ignore the warning signs. She had already been dragged into something that she couldn't walk away from. If Mr. Harris was really in trouble, and if there were people after him, it wasn't going to end with just a simple phone call or a conversation. She couldn't stay safe in her little bubble forever. With a deep breath, she stepped back from the door and reluctantly took the man's hand. His grip was firm, but not harsh, as if he were guiding her through a storm rather than pushing her. Good choice, he said, and the words seemed to relieve some of the tension in his voice. I'll explain more when we get to a safe place. Lily nodded, trying to calm her racing heart. She didn't know what would happen next, but she was already in too deep to back out now. She couldn't be sure, but she had a feeling that her life, and maybe even her future, depended on the decisions she was making right now. The man led her down the front steps, his eyes scanning the surroundings as if checking for danger. Lily followed him down the driveway, her mind spinning with questions. Where was he taking her? How would he keep her safe? And what exactly was Mr. Harris involved in? As they reached his car parked at the curb, the man turned to her and said, I know you're scared. I'm not going to lie. Things are about to get a lot more complicated, but you're not alone in this. Lily opened the passenger door and got inside. She noticed the car was older but well-maintained. The man got in beside her, and without saying another word, he started the engine. As they pulled away from her house, Lily couldn't help but glance back at the front door. Her life was changing, and she didn't know where it would take her. The streets blurred as they drove, each turn and intersection taking her farther from the world she knew. Lily's eyes flicked between the man driving and the rearview mirror, wondering if someone was following them. The tension in the car was palpable. Every minute felt like an eternity. But still, the silence was better than the fear of being watched. We're going to a place where we'll be safe, the man said, his voice calm but serious. But there's something you need to understand. The people we're dealing with don't play by the rules. If they think you know something, they'll stop at nothing to get it from you. Lily nodded slowly, her mind racing. I didn't mean to get involved in any of this. I just wanted to do something nice. Help someone. The man glanced at her for a brief moment. I know, kid, but kindness doesn't always come without a cost. The car sped through the night, and Lily couldn't help but wonder just how much more her life would change before the truth of it all came to light. What was Mr. Harris really involved in? Who were these dangerous people? And most importantly, why had she been caught in the middle of it all? The answers weren't clear, but one thing was certain. There was no turning back now. Unraveling the secrets. Lily sat in the back seat, staring out of the window as the city lights flickered past. The world she once knew, so simple and predictable, felt miles away. Her hands were clenched tightly in her lap, her mind swirling with questions. The man beside her, whose name she still didn't know, remained silent, his eyes focused on the road ahead. The only sound in the car was the steady hum of the engine. After a few minutes, the man finally spoke, his voice low and serious. "We're almost there. I need you to listen carefully. What I'm about to tell you could change everything." Lily turned toward him, her stomach twisting. She had so many questions, but now she could only muster one. "Who are you?" The man's gaze flicked to her briefly before returning to the road. He didn't answer right away, and for a moment, Lily thought he wouldn't. But then, with a sigh, he spoke. "I'm someone who works to make sure people like you stay safe. People who find themselves in situations they didn't ask for. People who get caught up in things they don't understand. People who end up in the wrong place at the wrong time." Lily's heart raced. "So, you're not part of whatever Mr. Harris is involved in?" "No," he said firmly. "I'm the one who helps get people out of that mess. But right now, we're going to deal with something bigger than you or Mr. Harris. Something dangerous. And you need to trust me if we're going to get through this." Lily could feel the weight of his words sinking in. "What is it? What's going on?" The man's jaw tightened, and for a moment, it seemed as if he was debating whether or not to share more with her. Finally, he spoke again. "Mr. Harris is involved with people who've been operating under the radar for a long time. They're dangerous, and they've been watching you. They've been watching your every move since you met him. They're not just after him, they're after everything he knows." Lily's head spun. "But why? What does he know?" The man's eyes narrowed, his expression grim. "It's not just about him. It's about something much bigger, something that involves people with power, people who can make things disappear without anyone ever knowing. And Mr. Harris is the key to unraveling it all. That's why they're after him. That's why they'll stop at nothing to find him." Lily felt a chill run down her spine. "And I'm caught in the middle of it." The man nodded. "You didn't ask for this, but you're in danger because of what you've seen. You've been too close to the people involved. Now, they think you know more than you do. That makes you a target." Lily struggled to absorb what he was saying. Her mind was racing, trying to process everything. But it felt impossible to keep up. She was just a little girl trying to do something nice, and now her life was turned upside down by a series of events she hadn't even understood. "Why me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why did they target me?" The man looked at her, his eyes softening with understanding. "It's not about you personally. It's about what you represent. They think you know something, even if you don't. And if they think you know something, they'll do whatever it takes to make you talk." Lily shuddered at the thought. She had no idea what she was caught up in, but she could feel the gravity of the situation pressing down on her. Everything she thought she knew about the world was being shattered. The simple life she once led was gone, replaced by a dangerous game she didn't know how to play. As they drove deeper into the night, the streets became quieter, the buildings taller and more imposing. The man took a sharp turn and pulled into a hidden driveway, the headlights briefly illuminating a small, nondescript building in the distance. "This is where we'll be safe," he said, his voice reassuring but still tinged with urgency. "But we're not out of the woods yet. You need to stay close and stay alert." Lily nodded, her nerves on edge. She had no idea what was waiting for her, but she knew one thing for sure. She couldn't let her guard down. Not now. Not when everything seemed to be unraveling so quickly. As they got out of the car and walked toward the building, Lily's mind raced with thoughts of what lay ahead. Was this man really here to help her? Or was she walking straight into another trap? Every part of her wanted to trust him, but something inside her told her to be cautious. She had been lied to before. The man led her to a side door of the building, unlocking it with a quick flick of his wrist. He motioned for her to go inside, and she hesitated only for a second before stepping through the door. Inside, the building was dimly lit and sparsely furnished. The air was cool, and it smelled faintly of metal and dust. The man closed the door behind them, and for the first time since she'd met him, Lily felt a small sense of safety. She was out of the open, away from the eyes of whoever was looking for her, but she knew that this was just the beginning. "We'll wait here until we figure out our next move," the man said. "But you need to understand that things are about to get dangerous. The people who are after you won't stop until they get what they want. And if they think you know something, they'll do whatever it takes to get it out of you." Lily nodded slowly, her heart still racing. "What do we do now?" The man gave her a sharp look. "We wait, we watch, and we prepare for whatever comes next." The final confrontation. Lily sat in the dimly lit room, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions. She had never imagined her simple act of kindness would lead to this. A life on the run, a tangled web of dangerous people, and a man she barely knew now her only ally. The sense of normalcy she had once felt seemed like a distant memory, replaced by uncertainty and fear. The man, whose name she still didn't know, paced back and forth, clearly on edge. He had told her to stay quiet and stay low, but something about the tension in the air made her feel more exposed than ever. "Do you think they know where we are?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. The man stopped pacing and looked at her, his eyes sharp but full of concern. "They're smart. If they want to find you, they will. But we're not going to make it easy for them. I've set up some precautions, but you need to be ready for anything." Lily's heart raced. She had no idea what she was supposed to be ready for. She hadn't even known she was in danger until the day before. All she had wanted was to share a simple meal with an old man who was lonely on his birthday. Yet now she was caught in something far bigger than she could understand. Outside, the night was eerily quiet. The world felt as though it was holding its breath, and Lily couldn't shake the feeling that something was closing in on them. She glanced around the room, her eyes darting to every shadow, every corner. She couldn't let herself relax. Not now. Suddenly, there was a knock at the door. Lily froze. The sound of the knock was soft at first, almost hesitant. But then, it came again, more forcefully this time. The man's expression darkened, his hand instinctively going to the small earpiece he wore. "Stay back," he said to Lily, his voice low but firm. "Do not make a sound." Lily nodded, her heart pounding. She took a step back, pressing herself into the wall, as she watched him approach the door with caution. The knock came again, louder this time, followed by a voice from the other side. "I know you're in there," the voice called. "You can't hide forever." Lily's breath caught in her throat. The voice sounded familiar, but she couldn't place it. Who could it be? She thought back to the old man, Mr. Harris, but it didn't make sense. He wasn't the kind of person who would send people after her. Or was he? Could there have been something she missed? Something she hadn't understood until it was too late? The man by the door turned to her, his eyes narrowing. "Stay quiet. No matter what happens, don't make a sound." Lily nodded again, fear gripping her. She had no idea what was going on, but she could tell from the man's tense posture that this was a moment of reckoning. If they didn't get this right, everything could come crashing down. The knock came again, more insistent this time. The man took a deep breath, then motioned for Lily to move away from the door. Slowly, he moved toward the small window next to the entrance, peeking out. His eyes scanned the area quickly, and when he turned back to her, there was a look of determination in his eyes. "It's them," he said softly. "They found us." Lily's heart sank. She had no idea who they were, but she could feel the danger in the air, thick and suffocating. This wasn't just some random group looking for trouble, it was personal. Whoever these people were, they were after something specific, and she was at the center of it all. "We don't have much time," the man said, turning to her. "Stay close to me, and don't speak unless I tell you to. They're good, but we're better." Lily felt a shiver run down her spine. There was no way out of this. She had no choice but to trust the man. He had been her protector up to this point, and though she still didn't fully understand who he was or what this was all about, She knew that if she didn't follow his instructions, she might not make it out alive. The door suddenly rattled as someone on the other side tried to force it open. The man turned to her once more, his face grim. "Stay behind me, and be ready for anything." Lily's pulse raced as she stepped back into the shadows, her heart pounding so loudly that she was certain the people outside could hear it. The door creaked under the pressure, and the man stepped forward, positioning himself between her and the threat outside. Then, in a moment that felt like it lasted forever, the door burst open with a loud crash. Lily's breath caught in her throat as several figures stormed inside, their movements swift and practiced. They were here. "Where is she?" one of the men demanded, his voice low and threatening. His eyes scanned the room, landing on Lily for just a split second. It was clear they had been expecting her. The man who had been helping her stood tall, his body rigid with tension. "You'll have to go through me first," he said, his voice cold and unwavering. Lily's mind raced. What was happening? Who were these people? And why had they come for her? The man moved swiftly, positioning himself between Lily and the intruders. His every move was calculated, deliberate, like someone who had been in these situations before. The tension in the room was palpable, thick with the weight of what was to come. Lily could only watch, her heart in her throat. She had no idea how this would end, but she knew one thing for certain. This was the moment when everything would change. The final confrontation had begun, and in that moment, Lily realized that her simple act of kindness had set off a chain of events that would alter her life and the lives of those around her forever.